Hello, everybody, and welcome to the PHLY Draft Show with Fran Duffy. Now, Fran is there at the combine. I'm a little bit envious. We'll get to the reactions from all the players who you have seen, Fran. But listen, there's a lot of draft popcorn available right now. You put up your mock draft, which people can see. You're covering everything here for allphly.com, and obviously you're going to have lots of thoughts on the results of testing. But as we record this episode before the players test, we weren't really get into the weeds here. This is going to be an episode for the draft sickos. We want to just sort of talk process with you.
Yeah, and look, it's this week is one of my favorite in the calendar. It's a long week in Indianapolis. Certainly, this year I'm here for 8 days. Usually, it's an 8 or 9 day trip for me out here. And I think when you break up the week into little chunks, it starts off. Today is how things kicked off. We're recording this Tuesday night, so head coaches and GMs from all across the NFL all speak with the media. Wednesday morning, players start to speak with the media. So I haven't spoken to any players yet, but the first group that tests on Thursday, they speak on Wednesday, and then basically just go through the rotation there. And so you have the players speaking, and then Thursday on-field action begins, and you start to just kind of break the week up. It's a long week, but so much information to be able to pull away from every single day out here in Indianapolis.
Okay, so let's talk about what you are doing this week.
Okay.
I know today, as we record this on a Tuesday, though this episode will go live on a Thursday. And by the way, before we get to that, let me just say, starting next week, the PHLY Draft Show with Fran Duffy, we're going to be starting to go live Tuesdays at noon. We're going to be doing those bad boys live from then through the rest of draft season. So join us then. We'll be able to answer your questions and all that good stuff. But for this episode, today, you're sort of spending the day listening to coaches and GMs, writing down some sort of nuggets along the way. And I know that that you part of your sickness is that you have like extensive notes on all of these general managers. And as you have said before, a little part of you dies when one of them gets fired, because that's like a bunch of research that you have to flush down the drain. So what kinds of things are you interested to hear from those guys?
Yeah, almost like the thought process behind things that they prioritize with, with players that they target in the draft. Because look, at the end of the day, coaches and general managers, they go up to the podium, they go up to the dais, whatever term we want to use, and they lie often, right? We know this. They will speak in falsities. They'll lead you astray. So you can't believe everything they say. That said, one area where they can't lie is where they draft players and where they sign players, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you're putting your livelihood at stake there with those selections, with the players that you target. And so over the course of time, you could find trends. You could find something. Now, some of it is circumstantial. Some of it might be, look, hey, you got a 1 year sample where every single player this Carolina Panthers selected with Zach Berman's favorite GM, Dan Morgan, last year, every single one of them was Power 5. 4 of their first 5 players were 21 years old. Was that just how the board fell? Was there a purpose behind that? And so one of the things I did Tuesday, I talked with Dan Morgan, for a couple minutes and said brought those up. And I said, was that something that was done purposely? The Power 5 thing, I think that was more of just how the board fell. But he gave me a little bit of something in terms of the 21-year-olds. He was like, that was something where we wanted to get younger. Dave Canales, that coaching staff, they feel like they wanted some youth, and they're willing to let those guys develop. We are very much a developmental football team, and so we were good with being able to bring guys in that are a little bit younger. Some GMs and coaches will play ball with some of these questions and some don't, which is fine. That's obviously their prerogative. But those are just like those little tiny nuggets that I appreciate as someone who kind of nerds out over team building, because everybody has philosophies in terms of how they feel about a lot of these topics. But the other thing too is, as we're doing like mock drafts and things like that, obviously you and I, knowing the Eagles the way that we do, we laugh when someone, mocks a linebacker to the Eagles in the first round, right? We've done that for years. Howie Roseman would never do that. I try and take a lot of pride in when I do a mock draft or when I go on a show in another market, of not being able to bring things to the table where that's just not realistic. And so just having all of that knowledge helps me out in that way.
Are there a couple or things that stand out about certain GMs and their tendencies that really do or have over time proven to be true, because as you say, it can be so circumstantial. Like where you're talking about, 6 to 10 picks in the draft, and maybe they had they had 3 non-power 5 guys ranked ahead of the guy they ended up taking, and that's just not the way that the board fell. Just because that's who they drafted, it doesn't necessarily mean that those were, the things that they cared about. It could be a little bit just random, but other ones that over time that have really stuck out to you that that like, John Schneider or whoever, somebody who has a long range of picks is really interested in certain things.
Yeah, I mean, there are certain areas where it's like, okay, like the Cleveland Browns, we talked about that with Andrew Berry. Like early, the first couple days of the draft, it's going to be underclassmen from Power 5 schools. Like it's going to be underclassmen from Power 5 schools. Now, there are times where they have bucked that trend. You go in, especially over the last couple of years since the underclassmen numbers have gone down and decreased. Well, that lowers the pool that they can fish from, right? And so you've seen them take some seniors as they've gone. They took Cedric Tillman. I believe was the first one. They took Zach Sinter, the guard from Michigan. So they've taken a couple guys. The fact that I was able to name both of those guys off the top of my head, that tells you all you need to know about this sickness, by the way. But they've taken a couple seniors on day 2 in recent years. And I think, again, you have to kind of find your spots on where, which lines are non-negotiable and which lines are you able to be a little bit more pliable with. And that was some of the conversations that I did have today, where it's like, okay, like where are those areas where you're willing to make those concessions? I talked with Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, the GM of the Minnesota Vikings, and it's interesting. He said something early in the press conference where people talk about certain parts of the draft as very binary. He was talking about the quarterback position. It's like, oh, like you're either a top 5 guy or you're not worth having on your football team. And it's very binary. And, so I followed that up a little bit later and said, people look at analytically forward organizations. You would throw the Eagles into there, in that situation as well, and say like, okay, like if you are an analytically forward organization, you are typically going to draft younger. You're going to draft guys that have, aren't undersized, guys that, that test well. But then when you look at the Minnesota Vikings, like since Kwesi has been installed as general manager, since he got hired, they've taken guys that were under 180 pounds, guys that were older. They haven't taken a lot of underclassmen, things that kind of go against that. And to me, though, as I'm sitting here looking at that, I look at it as he's trying to find market inefficiencies, right? He's trying to find places where, like, all right, we're going to zig while everybody else is zagging. We talked about that with Howie Roseman and, some of the things that they did a year ago. And so I think when you look at it, it's always interesting. You don't want to just stay hard and fast with a lot of this. It's because it's not a definite, and that's one of the things I try and make sure I always articulate is that, just because that's the way Andrew Berry has acted over the course of his time as a general manager, if there was a senior, let's say they weren't picking at number 2, if they were picking at number 8, if there was a senior there that made sense, I wouldn't completely rule it out, but that might serve as a tiebreaker, in that kind of scenario. And
then you get into a conversation about, just as you hinted at, like the changing nature of the college football landscape, right? Where there are fewer underclassmen and there are probably fewer guys from non-Big 5 schools, because if they stay in school longer, they're probably going to transfer to a bigger school. Like all of that stuff sort of changes the historical trends that you might have had. So it's difficult, but that's your job to wade through that. Okay. We move beyond that, which is, sort of helping your putting all the pieces together league wide. And let's focus on the prospects themselves, who will begin testing and doing all that stuff on Thursday. You're going to be where?
Well, I'm going to be in the stadium for sure.
Okay.
Where I have posted up over the last decade is I usually sit over by the broad jump, which is like near side. I can tell you like section number and stuff like that, but there's a spot on the sideline, lower level where, okay, like I would usually sit like 10 rows up.
Okay.
I prefer the broad jump to the vertical. Number one, they have this huge monstrosity of the thing, like, in front of the vertical, so that like prevents sight
lines. Okay.
Yeah, but also I just think the broad jump is a little bit more applicable. It's just the people that I've talked with.
You see the explosiveness.
Yeah, in terms of like seeing that explosiveness come through, the people that I've talked to have said like, yeah, like we value the broad a little bit more than the vert. But then also, it's a great opportunity. Those guys are standing right in front of you in a straight line along the sideline. So it's a great place to body type players and just kind of get a sense of how guys are put together. That something that I will take notes of as I'm seeing guys go through. But then also it's right where the position workouts happen, right in the middle of the field. So I'm right there, great sight line. So that's where I have always set up. Having a media credential now as opposed to a team credential, which I had in the team in years past, might change that.
Okay.
But I've had media people sit with me at my spot in years past, so I think that there's some wiggle room there. We'll find out. Time will tell.
Yeah, you're Fran Duffy. They'll open up the red carpet for you.
I don't know about that.
So logistically, you've got like 100 players out there. How are you taking notes? Like, how? What is your paper like? What's going on here?
So my first couple of years, it would be I had like a notepad, right? And because you go to the Senior Bowl, you go to the Shrine Bowl, you get these notepads, and it's like, all right, like
now they used to be great. They've gotten smaller and smaller over the years, and
they are like the size of like a hotel key card.
It's not bad. Yeah, it's really bad. They used to be a nice thick one.
So, well, now over the last 4 or 5 years, as you know, I doing more podcasts around the draft and doing more content around the draft. And I want to be able to come back to my hotel room after workouts and be able to immediately verbalize what I just saw, which can be tough because like you mentioned, there's a lot of guys and it is rapid fire. So my sicko, you had never seen this until we talked about it. My note-taking process during the combine has evolved to the point where I am able to very efficiently go through, and I've got it right here. I've got this binder. All right.
Okay.
It's a thick binder.
You need a cover page on that binder.
It's the same binder I've used since like 2018 or so.
I think you should have Francis. I think you should have Francis make you a cover page.
That's not a bad idea. He honestly, like, I've got enough that he will sit while I'm watching if he's home and like we'll sit and like draw for me. That'll be the next project I have for him. Hey, like draw a couple football players and I'll put that in there. But basically what I'll do is every single, because I know all the drills that they go through, not just the athletic testing portion, but I personally put a lot of value into the positional workout. And so, a lot of people know like the gauntlet drill, right? All these things that the wide receivers, they're running across the width of the field. They catch the balls in rapid succession on the fly, and then they run into the end zone, right? Each drill or each position rather has about 5 or 6 position specific drills that they go through. So I have the names of all these drills all typed out along with the athletic testing numbers, a space over for some note taking. And then it's literally just in order. All right.
Because they go in order.
They go in order. It's DL01, DL02, DL03. You don't have time to be writing down like Joe Smith did this. Bo Wolf did that. So all of it's typed out, all of it's printed out, and now I'm just flying through the paper, bang, bang, bang. And basically the way I do it is every rep I have like 1 or 2 buzzwords, and then I give it a letter grade. It's an A for a positive rep, like, oh, that was a good rep, B for a neutral rep, and then C for a negative rep. And at the end of the day, I go back through because there'll be some time like, all right, the defensive tackle's finished, the edge group's up next. We've got like 20 minutes. So I'll go back through and I'm like, all right, like who had the most A's, who had the most C's? And I can very quickly be able to say, sit there and say like, wow, Abdul Carter had an outstanding workout. Look at I gave him A's for all of these reps, or so-and-so had a bad workout, right? And so I've gotten to the point now where I can be walking out of the stadium, and it's also helpful too. Like if I'm walking through, because usually you're bumping shoulders with scouts and with coaches, and say like, oh, like so I saw so-and-so did this. What did you think of him? Like just very easy to be able to recall that information, and then I get back and can start producing stuff. So. That's the good thing for, by the way, all of our diehards that are subscribed on allphly.com. All of those notes now, it just makes it so much faster being able to translate that stuff and get it up into the database. So that is my plan, to be able to get all that stuff, get back to my room, get it all into my database, and then copy that over to allphly.com. So you should have an idea of like, all right, who stood out in those position drills.
Now, far be it from me to offer any kind of feedback on your process here, but I'm just trying to think efficiently.
Okay.
The strokes in an A and a B, C is quick, but A and B feels a little bit less efficient than just a plus and a minus or whatever, or a check.
Here's the thing. So I do have modifiers where I will throw a plus or a minus in there every once in a while. Okay. So if it's an A plus, sometimes there's an A plus. Sometimes there's if a guy, just slips and falls on his face. That's gonna be a C- rep, right? So they're going to throw some of those in there.
Drill. I forget.
Yes, so you'll have some of those, and so I do throw the pluses and minuses will make their way into that as well.
Okay, all right. Now, with regard to those position workouts, what positions move the needle for you most in these settings?
My personal favorite position workout is the DB workout. Watching especially the corners, but certainly the safeties as well. But watching those guys go through it, it is much more. I get more out of that than any of the other ones, just because to me it best replicates the movements that they're asked to do in a game. You watch those guys go in reverse, you see them break at a 45-degree angle on a throw in front of them, or decelerate, then flip their hips and turn and run and find the ball. To me, there's so many of those drills. Look, each position has certain drills that to me, I value more than others in the workout. But for the DB stuff, because it is such a movement-based position and it's such a reactive position, I personally get more out of that. And that I love watching DBs, and so I think that probably has something to do with it as well. But to me, a Friday afternoon, Friday evening, watching the DBs go, that is my favorite day of workouts here in Indy.
And obviously, the context helps here, because it's not just you're seeing one guy work out and he's on the field. It's you're seeing one after another, and so you're able to see who moves differently, right?
Yep. And one of the things too about it, I think the best case study for it, and I'm so glad that some of these numbers now are coming out, because it honestly helps back up what my eyes are seeing. Last year for the receiver workout, remember because the first thing the guys will do, they come out and they'll do the jumps before cameras start rolling. So a group comes out and they do broad jump and vertical jump. They get split up into groups and then they switch. And then they will they'll blow the whistle. The guys will stretch, warm up, warm down, and then they'll go over and do the 40s. And that's when the show on NFL Network starts, right? So, all right, they're going to line up. They're going to do the 40s. Mark Gorchak, the longtime, instructor for over the 40-yard dash, he's going to be over there. He'll walk guys through it. And then everybody runs through first round of 40s, then the second round of 40s. And the thing that then happens, right? So Keon Coleman last year, that's going back to the case study. Keon Coleman ran 4.72 or something like that, the receiver from Florida State, and everybody's stock down. Keon Coleman can't run, can't do this. He's not athletic enough. But then he goes through the position workout. I'm man, he looks awesome in the position workout. He was, to me, one of my favorite player workouts from the receiver group last year. And then as I'm leaving the stadium, or it might have been as the workout was going through, it starts to come out that the NFL has started to time the gauntlet drill to see all right, who are the guys that are the fastest through the gauntlet. And Keon Coleman, despite the fact that he had the slowest 40, had the fastest gauntlet and didn't put a ball on the ground. And I'm yes, I love this. And it's just a great way to show the difference between, say, play speed and time speed, and some of the things that you're able to get out of it. Keon Coleman, he ended up going 33rd overall to the Buffalo Bills, had a solid rookie year. I think the future is bright for him. So I think when you look at that is a perfect example of something that I try and get out of the combine that, maybe others in the media space don't. The athletic testing is really important. Obviously, I do take that, I value that greatly. But for me, I want to be able to see who are the guys that test well, but does that movement also show up when they're going through the position workout? But also who are the guys that the coaches and scouts are getting on because they did a drill wrong? Who are the guys that are the ringleaders in their position groups and things like that? You pick on some of that as well. How do guys react when things don't go well? There are a number, I remember some receivers last year where the quarterbacks were struggling during the workout, and the ball is coming out high, and you just see receivers just getting pissed. Then you see other guys where all right, they're getting back to the back of the line. Give me another rep. You just kind of pick up on those little anecdotes that maybe mean something and maybe mean nothing. But again, it's you got to sort through it.
So as we talk about risers and fallers,
okay,
and people are watching your draft guide, which is a living document available to all the diehards, realistically, how much might you bump somebody up or down based on the way that this week goes?
It's possible that some guys could move up for me because let's say I've watched 2 games of a player. A lot of the players, I don't want to say a majority of the players, but there are a lot of players on the database where I've watched 2 games, 3 games, because the way that I try and approach the process is I'll watch 2 or 3 at a time. And then when I get to this part of the calendar, now it's about, all right, I've got all the tape. Let me watch all of the receivers' targets from this past year, all of the DBs times that he was targeted in space, whatever cut-ups I want to be able to watch. And so I want to be able to say like, okay, I'll go back and I have like 2 or 3 pass-throughs on a player. I will make my evaluation based off of 2 games. Those are my notes. But let's say I've got a question about, you know what, like, I don't know that this guy's athletic enough at his size to be a starter. I think he's probably more of let's say it's a pass rusher. He's more of a first guy off the bench. To me, that affects where I've got him in the pecking order, right? In terms of what my projection is. I don't do round grade projections. So you won't see me like when I talk about a guy like, oh, he looks like, I would grade him as a 2nd round pick. I talk about it in terms of what I think his role is in the NFL, which can also be tough because I'm not grading for one specific team. But I will say like this guy looks like a starter, and I have starter broken up into a couple different tiers there. But like he could be a top end backup, he could be a role player. I've got all of these different tiers to it. So if a guy goes and he tests better than I thought, and he looks better physically than I thought, maybe you get those physical affirmations that way. Well, yeah, I'm going to bump him up because now I feel a little bit better about the upside. Maybe now I've talked with some people behind the scenes. I get a better sense of his character. That could help a guy rise and fall as well. And so look, it's tough for one person. My friend Ben Fennell will always say like every draft analyst is a one-person scouting department. And it's exactly right. Like you don't have the luxury of 20 people going out and canvassing the country. So I'm relying on my sources, a lot of whom I'm catching up with over the course of the week here in Indy.
All right. Can we go like quickly position by position? You tell me like what's the one thing that you're looking for, and then maybe one memorable performance from over the years.
Oh, yeah, okay. I like that. One quick thing before we start.
Sure.
So as of this recording, I'm like mostly done them. By the time this airs, all of them will be done. If you go into the draft guide, so if you're a diehard, you go to the draft guide on the right-hand side above where all the position buttons are, so you can click and go position by position through all the write-ups. You will see like the combine cheat sheets, and on there you will get a sense. So you're getting ready for front 7 workouts on Thursday. You can go and you can see, all right, here are the players that Fran thinks are going to test really well, at each position. Here are the guys that if they don't test well, don't freak out, like trust the tape, like the tape is good, because I'm not expecting them to test well. I think that this is all about expectations, this event. So if a guy goes in and I don't expect him to run well, and he doesn't run well, don't count him against it twice. But it's a bunch of different categories like that. So use it as a cheat sheet if you want. If you're a diehard, you can go and you have access to that. So yeah, I just wanted to give that a quick plug.
The amount of information that is in this draft guide, it's unbelievable. I mean, it is truly like you have access to your brain.
Yeah, it's a scary place to be.
Yeah, we need a tab for charcuterie.
Look, we can have that discussion as well, and I can talk about all the different spreads that you put on different cheeses. We can have those conversations. That might be more of a May conversation as opposed to a February or March one. Okay.
All right. Let's talk quarterback.
Yeah.
Tell me like what's you always hear like you want GMs they want to watch a quarterback to see how the ball comes out of his hand.
Yeah.
Does that move the needle for you, or is there something else that you are looking to see?
1,000%. I think that is it is very important. And that's why it is disappointing for me when a guy like Shedeur Sanders isn't going to throw, because this is my only chance to be able to see him live. That's not the case for 32 teams, right? So all 32 teams, whether it's the pro day, private workouts, whatever it is, obviously the teams have been on campus, been able to see him throw live, so they're not missing out on that. So now I have to kind of rely on word of mouth, that people that get to see him throw live and get their take on it. But that is the number one thing I'm looking for from a quarterback standpoint. It is not, his completion percentage in the workout was X. He had a bunch of overthrows. They're working with guys that they've never, mostly have never thrown to before. They're working with players like receivers. Sometimes some guys are going full speed. Other guys are jogging through the workout, right? It just depends. And it's going to change from rep to rep, drill to drill, player to player. So yeah, I'm not expecting everything to look super clean. I want to see how the ball comes out. And on throws, you generally want to see a guy look at more accurate than not. But again, I'm not like grading the completion percentage in the workout.
Is there a performance that comes to mind from over the years?
CJ Stroud, for a couple years ago. CJ Stroud, I remember like leaving that and thinking like, whoa, because I was a Bryce Young over CJ Stroud guy. I liked CJ Stroud a lot, but I remember leaving that because Bryce Young, I don't think Bryce, I'm pretty sure didn't work out. And Stroud did. And I remember thinking like, man, like, all right, like Stroud, if he's not number one, like he's going to be the number 2 pick. And obviously he's been outstanding, more so as a rookie than this past year. But his workout stood out for sure.
Do you think about like these, these are the kinds of conversations that might be had in a larger scouting department as they're just, having beers talking about guys like, Shedeur Sanders not throwing. It's not really an alpha thing to do, right? Like if you're the alpha, don't you want to go out there and throw the ball?
Yeah, and I was talking with some people about it today, and it was somebody for a team that could be in the quarterback market, and we were like, oh, like it is what it is. Like guys opt out of these workouts all the time. I think the conversation then went to like, do you think Cam Ward's going to throw? And have you seen the videos of Ward and Shedeur like working out together? Yeah, so like there are clearly like some competitive juices between those two guys. I kind of think like because the reports, and again, we're recording this a couple days before the workout, and so the news might come out beforehand, before this airs. But the reports were like that he was undecided, that Cam Ward was undecided. I kind of think Shedeur's decision might make Ward want to do it more.
That's how
I kind of think that he might want to work out more now. So yeah, we'll see. I do think that some people look at it that way. Others are more forgiving.
Okay. How about running back? What's important for you to see with a running back?
I like being able to see guys. There's 2 aspects. Number one, you want to be able to see like the light feet and the lateral quickness. There are a lot of drills. There's actually a Deuce Staley drill, and Deuce was working with the Eagles when this drill got instituted, and it's still called the Deuce Staley drill. And so it's funny. There's 2 of them, and it's Deuce Staley drill 1 and Deuce Staley drill 2. They haven't given it any other names, but it's a lot of get up off the ground, get your feet up and down in the pads, or through the bags, and they explode out of it, right? And so you certainly like to be able to see that. It's a lot of change of direction work. But then the other aspect is just the pass game stuff. They'll run not a full route tree, but out of the backfield, they'll run a full route tree. How natural they look being able to catch the football. Are they able to make plays down the field? Do they look comfortable doing that? That also speaks to the athleticism portion, of the evaluation for those guys. So I like being able
for guys who may be coming from different offenses.
Yes. So some guys are used a lot in the pass game. I think of in this class, Woody Marks from USC. Like he's had like at least 40 catches every year he's been in college. He played for Mike Leach at Mississippi State and was very, very active in the pass game. But then other guys, like aren't used that way, but it doesn't mean that they can't do it. Just, like Jonathan Taylor was barely targeted as a running back out of the backfield for Wisconsin, but had a solid workout, for when it came to that stuff here. So I like being able to see what that upside looks like, especially because so many players, it is a question mark.
Okay, we get a Jonathan Taylor shout there, so maybe we move on to wide receiver.
The Christian McCaffrey receiving workout was special, and I remember like talking with receivers coaches leaving that. Receivers coaches came to the running back workout specifically to see McCaffrey catch balls because there were some that thought like he could be a slot receiver when he was coming out of Stanford.
Yeah, that's a good one. All right, wide receiver. You talked about the importance of the gauntlet with Keon Coleman and moving his way through much quicker than he runs. Anything else to shout out there?
Yeah, the gauntlet would be number one, and then you just want to be able to see guys just look natural, look smooth, catching the football overall. Like over the course of the entire workout, they'll run the full tree, short stuff, intermediate stuff, and then down the field. Some guys get a lot of reps catching balls over the shoulder, 25 plus yards downfield, and others don't. And so being able to see certain players put through the paces there, that is valuable.
Any workouts from over the years?
I mentioned Coleman. I mean, no. AJ Brown. I feel like I remember AJ having a good workout. Nothing like strikes out. I was like, oh, like that one was a really special one.
Nothing like Sam Bradford's pro day.
Right. I mean, that's the stuff of legends.
Yes. Okay, tight ends. Obviously, a position where you have to do a lot of different things. What do you want to see from those guys?
Yeah, I mean, gauntlet you put in there, certainly, because they'll go through that workout as well, or through that drill. So you definitely want to see them run through the gauntlet, all the same things you say about receivers. The big thing, I guess I didn't really talk through like what I want to see, when they're going through the gauntlet, is you want to be able to obviously like don't put the ball on the ground, right? A lot of guys will try and cheat the drill where you'll see it because basically like the first pass comes from the left, then the next one comes from the right, next one comes from the left. So they're constantly like looking back and forth, and guys will cheat it where basically they like almost like pat the ball down. and it's not catching it, right? Like it's you want to be able to like see the guy like, all right, pull the ball in and then dump it off to the other side. So show like actually complete the catch. But then you also see guys slow down and go slow through it. So I mentioned like Keon Coleman running it fast through it. That's big. And then you just want to be able to see them finish. So that's what you're looking for in the gauntlet. You want to see tight ends do it. But then to me also the blocking drills with the bags. It's not the same as trying to block a 265-pound defensive end, but you just want to be able to see like, all right, like guys that weren't asked to put their hand in the ground and like explode out of a stance and initiate a block with force. Do you have the ability to do that? I remember Dallas Goedert, him showing up in some of those drills. You want to be able to see like what does a guy look like in that scenario. Again, it's not apples to apples with being able to see it on film, but you want to be able to get a little taste of it.
How about offensive line? What do you want to see from the big fellas as Jeff Stoutland is moving them around?
Yeah, because Stout is very active during the O-line workout, as you would imagine. He usually runs a drill or two every single year. I think for me, it's certainly the movement stuff, guys in reverse, the fluid hips, the light feet. A big thing to look for, and this is something you can look for on film as well, but a big thing to look for is when guys are moving in reverse, the ease of movement. And a good way to be able to determine that is you watch their head, right? Because if guys are really stressed, a lot of it is like herky-jerky, like their head, it's very violent, like their head moving back and forth. The guys that are doing it kind of naturally and with ease, it's graceful and there's not a lot of movement with their head. So
that's a good tip. I like that.
Yeah, that is one that someone taught me a bunch of years back. And so that is certainly one to look for when you're going through the O-line.
Any memorable offensive line workouts?
A bunch. I remember Jedrick Wills looking really good out of Alabama. That was one that I remember.
Potential future Eagle.
Well, potentially. That was one that I remember standing out. I enjoy watching the O-line workout. So off the top of my head, I can't think of one in particular, but there's always a few every year. I'm like, oh, like that was it. And honestly, like athletic testing for offensive linemen is also a really good indicator. They're the shuttles in terms of future success. That's a big one to watch.
All right. Athletic testing also very important for the defensive lineman. You want to see that explosiveness that you're talking about as you're watching those guys do the broad jump. You want to see their 3-cone times. Is there anything from the position drills that moves the needle for you?
Yep. There's certain bag drills that are big. You want to be able to see like the violence through it and the ability to gain ground, go through it fast. Those are big. The NFL has started doing like simulcams. The way they do it for the 40-yard dash, they'll do it for those bag drills. And so you kind of see like, all right, like this guy was flying through it, and you see like the violence in the back. I remember like Braden Fisk last year was really impressive, in those drills. But for me, the one that I love the most is the figure 8 drill, where they take these two huge like hula hoop looking things. I mean, they're probably a diameter of like 15, 20 feet. Like they're pretty big hula hoops. They're put right next to each other with towels on the very tips of the circle. And so the guys basically run the figure 8, and when they hit the I guess would it be the apex of the circle? When they hit the bottom of the circle and then the top of the circle, you have to basically crouch down while still going at full speed, pick up the towel, and then when you hit the next turn, drop the towel. And so you basically are able to see flexibility, burst, the balance, all of that show up. So you want to be able to see who are the guys where they don't have to labor as much when they're asked to do that. And that's a good way to be able to see like Derek Barnett would be awesome at that drill, right? You talk about like his flexibility in his lower half. When he was coming out, that was a drill. I don't think they were doing it back then. This is still a relatively new drill that they've put in, but that's one that I really enjoy.
Now, linebacker is interesting to me because to me, I would think that linebacker is the position where all you need is just to sort of hit a baseline of athletic testing, and the testing results matter the least because it's really all about how fast you react on the football field to football stuff, right? But there must be some things that are interesting to you. What are they?
Yeah, I mean, I will say that there are like certain thresholds that you want to be able to hit.
Sure, like you got to clear a line.
You want to hit that baseline, right? Like if you don't hit 4.8 in the 40 as a linebacker,
sure.
That's troublesome.
Right.
So I think but for me, like in the position workout, I do want to see like what they look like in space. Like a lot of the spatial stuff I do think can be important. And it just kind of, again, determines what the upside is of a player. I'm going to be doing a big board here for PHLY.com in the coming weeks. It won't be next week, but it'll probably be the week after. people might be taken aback by like some of the positional value stuff that is going to be present in my thing. And to me, like linebacker is most reflected that way, because honestly, like if you are a linebacker that can't play in space, I don't want to say you're a dime a dozen, but you're essentially a dime a dozen. Like those guys you're not going to be cracking like that top 100. And it's not even just like, oh yeah, like I'm keeping you off, but in terms of the way that I tier players, those guys just get bumped all the way down. It's the same thing at running back. Just if you are not like an RB1, RB2 type, then you are going to be pretty far down the list in terms of just, and it's based off of salaries that the NFL hands out. So the NFL like tells you where they put their money where their mouth is in terms of the money that they give out to veterans, that play these certain roles. And so, if that's what I think you are, if I think I'm not to call out this player, but like if you're Boston Scott, if I think you're going to be Boston Scott, like that's a useful player, but that what does that guy get like on the market? Yeah. What do teams feel about playing that player? It's not like a huge amount of money, and so I'm not going to have you high up on my board that way. So again, there are examples of that, but I think when you look at linebacker, that is a threshold that I think you need to be able to clear. So for me, like the space play, the space stuff is important for me.
Yeah, I think with linebacker, it's interesting to keep it Eagles as we think about like the Zach Bond decision and why the Eagles would have shied away from linebackers in the past. I think one thing that gets lost in the conversation is that it's not just about positional value and the market. It's about like the projection at that position is very difficult. Like the first round linebackers are littered with guys who were just like, I don't want to be mean, but like total busts in the NFL, like absolutely did not live up to that draft slot. And so if the value is this, and it's not the most important position, and it's not anything close to a sure thing that you're going to get what you think you're going to get there, all of a sudden the calculation becomes very weighted towards it not being worth it. Whereas like the Zach Bond decision is now that you know that this guy in this system can be this type of player, it's a much different calculation. Maybe you are willing to pay for it because there's no guesswork to it.
Yeah, and to me, like that's staying from an Eagles focus thing. That's why when people were talking about Nakobe Dean when he was coming out of Georgia as a first round pick, like as a top 25 pick, I just never saw that, And so for me, like where the Eagles got him in the third round, I was like, okay, like that to me like makes sense from a valuation standpoint, because to your point, like Zach Bond has shown he can be a 3-down presence, what he can do in coverage, what he can do as a rusher. If you're not that guy, I can't spend a first round pick on this player, right? And so there's only a couple guys in it. Honestly, like in every draft, at most you're talking like one or two that you feel really good can hit that ceiling. This year you look at like Jahad Campbell from Alabama, and then you look at Carson Schwessinger from UCLA as the two options that I feel really good about definitely hitting that as that kind of 3-down presence. Those guys can be really hard to find, and so if I don't think you're that, it's almost like a rags and riches type of deal where it's like, all right, like there's going to be the guys at the very top and then a wide gap until you get down to the bottom.
All right. Anything else that we should know about your process over the course of the next half week or so?
Yeah, I mean, no, look, it's a little bit, once you get to Thursday, it turns a little bit into Groundhog Day. It's early mornings because the media availability starts at 8. Drills usually don't finish at the stadium until it changes each day, but like 8:30, 9:30, then they come back. Once I get to the drills, so once I get to Thursday, I'm done for the most part, like going out like at night, unless I get a text that like I just can't say no to, right. Or if it's like hey, I'll meet you for breakfast. I'll get you coffee, get coffee with you, that kind of thing. But when I get back at night, Thursday through Sunday, it is, all right, let me go through all my notes while all of it is fresh. The 70 players that I just watched for the last 8 hours. Let's get all that stuff down and share it with our diehards.
All right. Well, I would imagine that if you've made it this long, you've got to be a diehard, because I mean the amount of information that you're going to get is, I believe, unprecedented on the draft sicko market. And we look forward, Fran, to finding out everything you think about what you see over the next several days. And then we will be back on Tuesday at noon for the first live episode of the PHLY Draft Show with Fran Duffy. Have a lot of fun. Good luck. Happy hunting. And I hope you see those swips swivel, my friend.
Thanks,
Swips swivel. I meant hips swivel.
Might work either way.
Maybe it's a new thing. All right. So for Fran, I'm Bo Wolf. We thank you for watching the PHLY Draft Show with Fran Duffy. We will talk to you on Tuesday. And as always, we love you.
We all silly like the mayor.